In the final hours, as we wait any minute, any day, we could be finding out where Shohei Ohtani will be playing perhaps the remainder of his playing career in the MLB. We've heard Blue Jays, we've heard Braves, Red Sox, Yankees, Rangers, Giants, Dodgers, of course, getting thrown out there for Shohei. But we know at least some teams got ruled out recently. So Rangers ruled out, Red Sox ruled out, Mets ruled out. Three names gone. Angels trying to jump back in it. Dodgers still the favorites. Deciphering all of this, how are you feeling about recent reporting?
Let's start off with the smaller ones, then jump into the bigger picture stuff. Just the smaller notes from the last week. I really thought Texas was going to have a puncher's chance at it. I thought it made so much sense in the world, and Ohtani could move into like a hybrid closer type of role potentially if he goes to Texas, where he like isn't truly a ninth inning reliever, but comes in like the seventh, eighth, and ninth, or the eighth and ninth, or like gets an extended run as a reliever. I thought that made a lot of sense. And not to say that that can't happen if he goes to like the Blue Jays or something like that, but I just thought that was going to be something that was appealing. Texas is the world champions. I thought that would have made sense. So I was surprised to see Texas just drop out of the running altogether, especially because Texas hasn't been afraid to just throw money out there like it's nobody's business. I thought that was pretty surprising. It was weird to see the Angels name pop up again, considering the last time we were here talking Ohtani, we made fun of like, what are the Angels thinking right now that they're not even involved in the game? And I don't think they're seriously involved. I just think they had a meeting with him and they gave the team the courtesy of having a meeting. And I think that's why you're seeing the Angels kind of trickle up there into the group of teams at this point. But I don't think they're serious contenders. The odds as they stand right now have the Angels tied for sixth as the best chance to land Ohtani, and that's basically out of the race at this point. I think they're just there because we know that he met with the team.
Flat out, I'll be honest, I would lose a little respect for Shohei if he re-signed with the Angels. Just saying, that would be like a demerit on his career for me if he re-signed there. But as far as the Angels getting back into it, I just gotta say, it was a necessity, I feel, for them at least be somewhat involved. How can you not trade him or make a serious attempt at trying to trade him under the guise of we don't want to be the team that traded Shohei Ohtani, only to not even make an honest attempt at re-signing him in the offseason? Makes a lot of sense for them to jump back out there. Now, the Braves, the interesting thing about that one, it felt like they fell out. Like when we were talking about it like 3 weeks ago, the Braves were hot. And then the last 2 weeks, they went quiet mode. And now today it was John Morosi. So here on a Monday, saying that he feels as though that they're going to jump back in it. And obviously we know how deadly that Braves lineup is already. The Braves coming off of this season where they had so much expectations. They had World Series expectations and then couldn't even make it out of the first round. The Braves, now that they're back in there, how much of a serious contender do you think they are?
From everything I've understood about Ohtani, it wouldn't make sense if he turned on a dime and went to the Atlanta Braves. Although I do fully acknowledge like a lot of this is about money, right? I said before he's going to go to the team that pays him the most money between like the 3 or 4 contenders that he wanted to go to. Now, I thought Texas was at the front of that line and Texas is obviously out, so that's changed a bit. But money is still going to break ties between some of these teams that get involved. Like if, say, for example, the Cubs are only offering $500 million. I know it's crazy to say only $500 million and there's opt-outs in there and all sorts of stuff, but like say it's only $500 million with the Cubs and then the Dodgers or the Blue Jays or the Braves even are going $50 million plus on top of that, which is potentially an average annual value of $5 million a year, then that's probably going to knock them out of the race for Ohtani at a certain point. So I think money is going to play a factor in that. And the Braves obviously have money. Our guy Snitker, who is their manager, basically said at the end of the postseason, we have built a team for regular season baseball. We are not built for the postseason. And that's something that we need to correct. I don't know if he meant like just the mindset of the team or roster construction or whatever that might mean, but he was pretty flat out. Like, we've lost 2 years in a row to the Phillies. We are not built for the postseason and we got to make changes. And I don't think Ohtani going to the Braves is going to happen. It would really shock me if they came in at the 11th hour, jumped up and actually landed him, especially because signing with the Braves goes against most of what Ohtani has been saying he's wanted over the last year or so, or at least what we've learned about Ohtani. He's been pretty quiet himself, but I would be shocked if he ended up on the Braves, although I know the Braves have a lot of money.
Well, what have we learned about Ohtani? We've learned that he wants to go to a contender because that's why we ruled out the Angels as a serious team trying to re-sign him this offseason. When I look at Atlanta, I obviously view them as a team that very much could win now if they put him in that lineup. It's just a murderous row with Shohei included in there. So I do think that the Braves are legitimate in this. And of course, that means the Dodgers, of course, are legitimate as well. If they could pair him around Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, that also is just a 1-2-3 punch that pitchers really don't want to face. Well, aside from the postseason, when we know Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts get like one hit combined, right? Another team that's been very quiet and was very loud early on was, of course, my San Francisco Giants. My expectations were obviously low going into this one. Like, as much as I obviously want them to sign Shohei, I know it could be such a game changer for him. I've questioned whether or not they really had the environment that could win for him, because a lot of the prospects that came up last year were not really too impressive, Patrick Bailey being the exception. But for the most part, like Marco Luciano, Elliot Ramos, these guys, just a bunch of guys. They seem like at least just a bunch of guys. We made the change from firing Kapler to get Bob Melvin in there. So new manager in town. It really just depends. Does he buy into the Giants geographically? Because this is where the geographic element comes into it. And can the Giants offer him a significant amount of money, which obviously they signed Carlos Correa up until the medical stuff came up. Obviously they were one of the 1-2 contenders for Aaron Judge. And it makes me wonder if after missing out on Judge and after the Carlos Correa thing, the Giants made it their prerogative to not leak stuff out this season, especially too when we go back to the original reporting of Shohei not wanting all his meetings to be out there for the public eye. It makes me think, could the Giants actually be one of those 11th hour teams based off their just being quiet this offseason, which actually I think might work to their benefit.
It's kind of interesting. I do sports radio here in Sacramento, Light the Beam. And one of the things that we were talking about with the Giants is Giants fans have been and the Giants organization at times has been loud and brash about pursuing free agents over the past couple of years. We are all in on Bryce Harper. We are all in on Aaron Judge or Arson Judge or whatever. We are all in on Carlos Correa after not getting Arson Judge. And Giants fans have kind of talked themselves into this idea of because we're not hearing anything, this is a good thing, because there's been no traction at all on the Giants going after Ohtani. Therefore, they're secretly all in on Ohtani and potentially a favorite if you want to talk yourself into it. I just don't think that that's the case at this point. They haven't had any significant traction towards Ohtani in 4 weeks, not since the first video we did talking about this, which I think was 4 weeks ago, where the Giants even mentioned as a possibility on a short list. We named 4 teams before we got to the Giants on a short list, and I don't think that's changed very much. And look, the rest of the offseason is pretty much on pause while we wait for Ohtani to decide, especially the teams that want to spend big money this offseason, and I think the Giants probably fit in that group. But you're the San Francisco Giants fan. If they walk away from this trading a couple or 3 of their prospects for Juan Soto, or they end up dropping $250,000 on, say, Blake Snell and $100 million free agent infielder or something like that. Do Giants fans view that as a disappointment ultimately, or are they just glad that they're doing something to improve the roster if they end up in that second tier group?
Well, when I compare it to the Rangers last year, right? Or the Rangers really 2 years ago when they went out there and signed Corey Seager and added Marcus Semien. Again, I tell you how I didn't really think much of the moves at the time, but I thought that obviously improved the team down the line enough so that they won a World Series literally a year later. I think that if they do sign Shohei, I would have to suspend disbelief that it's going to help them directly in the 2024 season, and then hope that they can at least get some prospects to mature by that point. Because right now it just seems like their prospects haven't really matured, or maybe they're just not going to turn into anything at all. When you talk about trading for Juan Soto, why I don't like that as much is because if I already think that our farm system is already kind of thin based off all the guys that came up to the major leagues already, then making it thinner for one guy, and even Juan Soto, he's had his ups and downs. Obviously, you can speak to more his brief tenure as a Padre. The early part of last year was looking pretty ugly up until he started turning it around. He kind of has some Brandon Belt tendencies in the sense that he's a very streaky guy. And I don't know if I necessarily want the Giants to invest 10 years in him based off that, and also strip their farm system down to the studs. I would rather sign a free agent where it's just a more clean transaction. We sign him, we get him, we don't give up anything. Maybe the guys we build around him can insulate him and turn into a good team in 1 to 2 years. I think that I like the free agent process a lot more than the trade process right now. So I don't think Juan Soto is really high on my priority list right now for this Giants team, unless, again, like we can really guarantee that some of these prospects are going to turn into something good for the Giants.
Okay, so I'm a big Juan Soto guy, and I'm kind of sad that he's not going to be in San Diego anymore. Although I just appreciate that he was even there at all for a year and a
Well,
half.
what about you? Because like I just want to say, like, the Padres, I've seen them thrown out there as a dark horse contender. If, let's say,
Yeah.
they trade Juan Soto, get Shohei in the building, just swap out Juan Soto for Shohei in the lineup, would that make a legitimate difference for them? Obviously, they had to change that manager as well.
It's not going to happen, Juju. The Padres' goal is to get payroll down to $200 million. And that's about a $75 million slash from where they were last year. It's not going to happen with Ohtani. $200 million is still significantly more than the Padres are used to spending, but it's way less than Peter Seidler, their late owner, was willing to spend, knowing that he was taking, or knowing that someone else would take on debt after he died. So, it's not going to be that for the Padres. They're not at all going after Blake Snell. They are trading Juan Soto and his $33 million. Ohtani's not going to be a thing for them. But in the Juan Soto case, if another team is going to latch onto him, even on his down year, which most people viewed last year as a down year because they remember the 180 batting average to start the season, like, he ended up making an all-star team last year. And if you take him from June onward, he was one of the top 20 players in WAR in baseball. Because the thing that he'll always be good at is drawing walks. There is nobody better in baseball at drawing walks than Juan Soto. And he plays great defense in left field, or maybe they'll move him to right field depending on the team that he gets traded to. I wouldn't have apprehensions with trading for Juan Soto. If it's a rental deal, that's obviously, to each team's own prerogative, because Soto has.
That's the red flag too with Juan Soto, the 1-year deal, because he's already said, or Scott Boras, his agent, has already said, he will not sign an extension to whatever team he gets traded for. That's why the Yankees don't want to make the deal right now for Juan Soto.
Yeah, and the Padres' price tag is incredibly high. It sounds like Toronto might be willing to match San Diego's incredibly high price tag, but it seems like there's going to be some compromise along the lines with the Soto trade. And so, like, if you're the Giants, if we bring it back to that in the Ohtani conversation, like, the alternatives are, like, they walk away with, like, Matt Chapman and Rhys Hoskins, which is, like, better than, like, the signings they've had in the last couple off seasons, which is, like, Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto and like, secondary, like, moves that are temporary. This would be like a significant investment in a third baseman for the next 5 years. A significant investment in Rhys Hoskins would be like locking down the first base position, which has had some revolving door tendencies for the Giants. And, like, maybe that feels good, and that's a good compromise for not getting Ohtani. But again, only one team's going to end up with Ohtani, and it looks like it's probably not going to be the Giants. So maybe the Giants start exploring that second or third tier group of free agents. I don't know if that gets them back to the playoffs, but it makes them better than they were last year. And I think that's something that they need, because that offense was really bad the last 2 months of the season. And so even if they don't end up with Ohtani, there are still ways, I feel like, to spend the money that would appease the fan base and make the team a little bit better.
We talked about the Blue Jays as well. The Blue Jays starting to listen a lot more like Toronto sports talk to kind of like get a like read on the way that team is kind of thinking about it. Many of their fans were quick to point out in the comment section last week that their president did say that there is a unicorn budget as well. So they are willing to spend the money for Shohei if he does say, hey, sign me up to play alongside Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. So they can apparently make that happen. They're not as proactive to slash payroll if they do manage to get Shohei, as opposed to what we were discussing last week. However, though, them signing Shohei may hurt their ability to keep guys like Guerrero and Bichette long term, because they'll also have to sign those guys here in the coming years as well. And those deals will definitely be very costly in their own rights.
That was a really interesting report that I saw that kind of caught me off guard. And I don't know if there's been follow-up on it, but Sportsnet in Canada, I believe was the report on that one, was saying that the Blue Jays would consider trading Bichette or even trading Vlad Guerrero Jr. if it meant signing Shohei Ohtani. And I thought that was really interesting, because the purpose of signing Ohtani would potentially be to just guarantee yourself a spot in the random, mix of postseason baseball that exists. But if they're saying there's only room for one superstar long term, I would be like one giant contract on. I mean, like, yes, George Springer is making $25 million a year, and it felt like a big contract at the time when Springer signed it. But
Gausman's making some serious money too.
Yeah, I mean, Gausman is getting paid, but like comparatively to what we're talking about with Ohtani or what a Vlad Guerrero Jr. would get in free agency, like this is slowly becoming kind of the middle of the free agent class. Like Springer making 7 years, 175 million seemed like a lot at the time. And now it's like 25 million a year, and it decreases with time. So Springer's deal isn't actually that dramatic when you think about building out a $200 million payroll. He's making about 11% of that payroll, which isn't that dramatic. So like it would be interesting if Springer found himself in that situation, but I don't know exactly how the Toronto Blue Jays proceed if the call is we're going to spend 25% of our payroll on Ohtani and we're just not committing to bringing back Bichette or Guerrero Jr. once their contracts come up. Because my philosophy is always, don't you want the hometown star to be the person who sticks around, the person that the fan base has gotten invested in? And like maybe they look up and say Vlad Jr. cannot be the best player on a team that competes for a championship. Maybe that's what they look up and see, but this is the guy that they drafted, they developed, they sold the fan base on for years. And if they're going to pivot immediately to Ohtani, and it means that Vlad Jr. only has like 1 or 2 years left, I'm not exactly sure that's the best strategy if you're going to end up winning the same number of games with Ohtani as compared to with Vlad Jr., Bo Bichette, Cavan Biggio, and that group that they have right now. Because, Toronto's hit on some players, they've missed on some players, but it would be a massive pivot if they decided to go the Shohei Ohtani route. I think the thing that makes more sense for them would be Ohtani makes sense for everyone, but if they're talking about payroll limitations and stuff, the thing that makes more sense for them is a 1-year rental on $33 million Juan Soto.
Yeah, they are talking about Juan Soto, but it also does feel like, are you going to have potentially 3 players leaving you in the next 2 years if you do make that trade for Juan Soto? So it would be a true all or nothing type move if they were to go all in on Juan Soto for 1 year, as opposed to try and get Shohei for at least obviously the next 10 years, and then trying to make it work with Vlad Guerrero, Bichette, and all the other guys they have in that lineup over the next 2. Of course, they have the competitiveness too to deal with in the AL East because the Orioles aren't going away. The Yankees can always rebound quickly. The Red Sox, we've seen them, a team that obviously has their ups and downs, certainly. And of course, the most consistent organization in baseball over the last decade, at least in the Rays. So that's why the Blue Jays have to constantly keep upping their game. And I think that they should be in the Shohei sweepstakes. They should be in the Yamamoto sweepstakes. They should be trying to get any kind of addition to this roster that they can to make themselves a true contender, not only to win a World Series, which is the obvious goal, but just to win that damn division, because the AL East is just a dogfight each and every year. So they just have to do something to separate. And again, we talked about it last week. The great thing that Toronto can do that no other franchise in Major League Baseball can do is, yes, Canada has a prime minister, but they could basically make Shohei king in Canada. He could be essentially their athletic king for all major sports if he signs there in Toronto. We saw, again, the Kawhi Leonard photo whenever he won that NBA championship. If he would have stayed, Kawhi would have owned Canada. If Shohei signs, he would own Canada. He would own a good share. Maybe we give him Montreal. Who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because I know how popular hockey is in Canada, and baseball will always be a secondary sport.
They will sell the Maple Leafs. They got Shohei. They would sell that curse.
I don't know, man. Austin Matthews is pretty popular, but besides the point, I'm
What's
looking
his name?
at
Connor McDavid, Edmonton, right? He's pretty good too, right?
Yeah, he's an MVP 2 times, maybe 3 times now, actually, but he's pretty good. Austin Matthews is like their Chris Bryant of sorts, where it's like he is the fan favorite on the most beloved team. It's a whole thing with Canada and their hockey and stuff. But I'm looking at the odds right now according to Bet365, and like you said, we're recording this on Monday. The Blue Jays have the second best odds right now to land Shohei Ohtani, and I think they're in that game because they're willing to play ball money wise. And maybe this is all just driving up negotiations to end up with the Dodgers. Because again, the favorite right now is still the Dodgers. It has always been the Dodgers. It will continue to be the Dodgers. And the thing I've said from the beginning, like if they are motivated to go after Shohei Ohtani with no financial limitations, because again, the Dodgers are bringing in that revenue from that television contract that is larger than all the others, and it gives them this great competitive advantage.
Doesn't have to move.
Yeah, exactly. He wouldn't have to move either. Like if the Dodgers are financially motivated to make this happen, there is not a team I think that can outbid them on Ohtani. Or even if a team tries to outbid them, they can offer Ohtani the lifestyle and the playing style that he prefers. Put him in a position that he's surrounded by other very, very good players on a team that has essentially won the NL West for 10 consecutive seasons. I know the Giants won in 2021, but the Dodgers beat them in the playoffs.
Let's backtrack that. Essential. We 107 wins. Give us some respect.
Yeah, but you lost to the Dodgers in the DS. So, whatever. You call it as you may. They've essentially won the NL West for a decade straight. Like, I still firmly believe this ends up with the Dodgers, as long as the Dodgers are willing to play ball financially. Because if Shohei Ohtani ends up with another team, it's because the Dodgers weren't willing to meet the price tag that someone else is going to reach, or potentially won't include certain opt-outs. Because that's the thing that's also going to happen in this deal. There's going to be an opt-out after 3 years for Ohtani. There's going to be a team opt-out after 5 years. There's going to be all sorts of quirks and details in the contract that we'll learn about once it's signed. But ultimately, if the dollar value is there and the Dodgers are willing to play ball, he's going to end up with the Dodgers. Like, it will be the Dodgers not wanting to pay a premium for Ohtani and deciding that we would be better served investing in other places. That will be the reason why he doesn't end up on the Dodgers, because the whole purpose of this for 2 years has been to put themselves in a position to land Shohei Ohtani, and it still feels pretty much like the Dodgers are in the driver's seat. I know we haven't heard a ton of rumors on the Dodgers recently, but it feels like all of this is angling towards Ohtani becoming a Dodger.
Do you think that could work to their detriment, like them just coasting to Ohtani services, like not even really making honest? But of course, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but just assuming they're the favorites and not doing a little anything extra, kind of like a little bit 2016 Hillary, just coasting on, I'm going to win this thing.
I mean, would Ohtani and his representatives take a deal from, say, the Cubs? And I'm not saying the Cubs are like really in this game. I know they're still considered to be one of the leaders in the clubhouse from an odds standpoint, but we haven't really heard a whole lot from the Cubs in recent days. Like, say the Cubs are offering $50 million more than what the Dodgers' previous offer was. Is there a world where Ohtani and his reps don't go back to the Dodgers and say, here's the offer on the table, will you match it? And the Dodgers say no. Like, is there a world where they would take a sight unseen offer they can't refuse from another team? I don't know if that world exists, but I also would have thought Jacob deGrom wouldn't have signed another deal sight unseen with another team, and he did that. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but if the Dodgers are presented like, this is the dollar value, will you match it? And they say no, then that's probably the moment that the Dodgers say, this is a little too rich for our blood, which I don't foresee them saying unless the dollar value gets so ridiculously, I mean, it's already ridiculously high, but unless the Dodgers look at it and say, well, we weren't willing to do this at $50 million a year, but at $60 million a year, that's too rich for our blood. I don't even know what the dollar value would realistically look like.
Well, haven't we learned that the Dodgers are a little bit of a risk-adverse franchise in a way? Like, they don't go out there and sign guys that have been through the ringers as far as injuries go, right? So, like, Shohei coming off the injury, that might provide a variable where another team could say, we'll offer you, as you're saying, another $50 million extra because the Dodgers don't want to go that because they're worried about his injury status. I don't know. I'm just, spitballing potential situations because that injury, it is a factor. It is a sacking UCL tear. If we never see Shohei the pitcher again, that affects value.
Yeah, I get that. And I don't know if other teams would be less risk averse necessarily. Like, I don't think of the Blue Jays as a team that's like taking chances on injured players. I mean, they traded Teoscar Hernandez after like a season of injury.
But when you hear a team say they have a unicorn budget, clearly they're willing to take a risk.
Yeah, and they've proven it to be so because the Blue Jays went from a team that was totally out of the conversation to the second leading favorite in a team that hasn't gone away for about 2.5 weeks now. So clearly they are willing to spend the money to get in this game. It's a little bit surprising that the Blue Jays, the Cubs, other teams that we wouldn't have foreseen at the start of this whole experiment have now jumped up and are willing to spend that kind of money, when you're right, there is not a guarantee of health, or there is not a guarantee of what Ohtani will look like post second Tommy John, or even if he's going to be a starting pitcher long term. He could move into this hybrid reliever role that we've been talking about, which is incredibly valuable for the Dodgers at a price tag that is $5 to $10 million more than per year than any other player in baseball. You're expecting a lot out of him, obviously, and that's why you're making the signing. So yeah, I understand why there would be apprehension because of the injury. I don't think of the Dodgers being unique in the sense of not wanting to sign injury prone players.
It's fair. You obviously you do your due diligence as a franchise and you chart your course out based off the information that you receive. So with that said, it sounds like you're thinking Dodgers are going to make this signing happen. Since this might be the last Shohei prediction video we get a chance to do, I'm just going to put some good energy out in the world and just say San Francisco Giants, Shohei Ohtani, 10 years, $550 million deal. Let's just make it happen. Screw it. Let's get crazy. Anyway, guys, where do you think Shohei signs? We might know by the time you're watching this. We might know by next week. We'll see how this thing goes. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias from Juju and Kyle. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.